Sawadee-kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our group learning program, and what I do on Wednesdays is I guide you in meditation and then open up to any and all questions that you might have. On Sundays, I go chapter by chapter in this book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. This is the foundational text that's going to help you to develop a life practice in your journey to enlightenment. So I'd like to welcome all of you, whether you're joining for the first time or you're joining regularly, and at the same time invite you to join for meditation. I'm going to start with some chanting to ease us into meditation. Then I'm going to come in with some guidance to guide you in your meditation. There'll be a period of time where it's just quiet and we're just all meditating together. And then I'll come out of the meditation with some more chanting as well. And you're more than welcome to join in with the chanting. And then after the meditation, I'm going to open up to any and all questions that you guys have related to the path to enlightenment or any challenges that you're having yourself on your journey to enlightenment. You can ask questions by putting it into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. So if you'd like to join along for meditation, you might pull up a cushion or a pillow or anything like this, and I'll be back after I do some chanting to give you some guidance in the meditation. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Otang Mahakawanang Apiwate Sawakato Mahakawata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti pisu Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakhato Rokavitu Anuttaro Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatava Manusanang Oto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Once the breath is well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. Arahang Sama Sambuddho Mahakawa Bhutang Mahakavanang Apivateyami Sawakato Mahakavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti pisu Mahakawa Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavito Anutero Purisa Dhammasati Satatawa Manusanang Oto Bhagavati. All right, if you'd like to slowly make your way out of meditation, once again, welcome to everyone in our class today. Welcome to those of you guys that joined us since we started meditating. Nice to see everyone here. If you guys would like to ask questions about anything related to the path to enlightenment or any challenges that you're experiencing on the journey, let me know. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. I'll be able to see that in the comment section and answer your question. If you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand, and then I'll be able to call on you, and you can open up your microphone and ask any and all questions that you like. So do you guys have any questions that you'd like to ask related to the path to enlightenment or any aspect of your journey to enlightenment? Okay, it looks like Helena has a question. Go ahead, ma'am.
Sawadika.
Sawadika.
Thank you, David, for letting me ask my question number 1 million. So I would like to know if you know, hypothetically, if an enlightened being ingested strong psychedelic drugs by accident, what would be the reaction? The body would be high. What about the mind?
I would suspect that the mind would still experience that influence because it's chemically based and it's affecting the brain, which the brain and the mind are two different things. So the brain will affect the mind, even though there's a connection, or even though they're two separate things, there is a connection between the two of them. So just like the mind affects the brain can affect the mind too. So I suspect that they would still experience the same effects. It might be muted more so than, another individual. I'm not sure. We don't have any situations where that has occurred, but this would just be my thoughts on it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. And during the retreat, you talked about your grandma and that you suspect that she might get enlightened at death, right?
Yes.
And is she a practitioner of the teachings?
She's practicing what we would probably consider the teachings, but she's not practicing them according to having learned them directly from what the Buddha taught. But people can be exposed to different things at different times. And she was exposed to Jesus Christ teachings quite a bit, which has, some moral conduct and different things in there. She actually has read the first book, a version of it a few years ago. She read the first book that I have. She told me she didn't understand it all, but she enjoyed reading it. So, you glean things from like mentors, from bosses, from friends, because these are the natural laws, and you are affected by these natural laws, whether you're aware of them or not. So she's accumulated certain wisdom along her life that's helped her. And, I've even helped her with certain things and shared certain things with her that would be helpful for her. So I wouldn't consider her like a direct practitioner of Gautama Buddha's teachings. If you said the word Gautama Buddha to her, she probably wouldn't even know what that means. But she's practicing the natural laws. You can see that she doesn't gossip, she doesn't slander, she doesn't speak harshly, she doesn't have frivolous speech, she doesn't lie. She's only ever had sex with one man in her entire life, which was my grandfather. So it's like she does things according to what we would consider the 5 precepts or the Eightfold Path, but she just didn't learn it in that way, in the structure that we learn it in.
So if she attained enlightenment at death, it would be like directly from the jhanas to the 4th stage. Essentially,
yeah. Like that's what you would like, because if you look at the way that the individual's mind progresses with natural aging, if they haven't had any understanding of the teachings of the Buddha, as we age, you can see that these fetters start to naturally be eliminated. If you know about the fetters, which you're learning about in this retreat, like personal existence view. One of the things that happens as we age, we're less and less interested in our self-image and what people think of us. And, we don't cling to any identity necessarily about who we think we are as a person. All that starts to fade away. Same thing with sensual desire and ill will. Oftentimes that fades away. Not always, right? You can be old and have an extensive amount of sensual desire or personal existence view or ill will or some of these other ones. But for a lot of people, the natural aging process tends to lean towards enlightenment. And there's people who are shedding these fetters without actually realizing that's what they're doing. Like one of the things my grandmother told me, because she drove up until she was like 96 years old or 98 years old. She's like 101 now. And finally, at the age of 96, I think it was, they took her driver's license from her because she got into a minor car accident. Well, she said to me, she said, do you know how hard it was to let go of driving in that car? And she didn't understand attachment, right? She doesn't understand what that is, but she's shedding things. Like as she's getting older, she's having to shed this car, which is her, not just her transportation, but it's her independence that she was shedding. And she's always been an independent woman. She had a mobile phone that was like the old flip phones. And when I was in America in 2022, I was suggesting to her that we buy her a smartphone so that when we're back in Thailand, she could video call with us. She was like, no, I don't need any other phone or gadget. This is serving me just fine. Well, within about 2 months after coming back to Thailand, her phone company sent her a brand new phone, and they said that they were discontinuing her current phone and that she would now need to use this new phone. And she had to let go of that attachment, right? She was like holding on to that. She wouldn't let it go. And she got a little bit angry when the phone company did this, which shows that she had a craving there, right? Because that discontentedness wouldn't have rose if she didn't have a craving or attachment to her phone. So she had to let that go, right? So as you age, you experience so much impermanence that the mind has a tendency to naturally let go. But obviously the best ideal thing would be to actively train the mind while you're alive, while you're young, like you are. And that way you can train your mind and get to enlightenment long before, death.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah. I see there are some other interesting questions in the chat. So if there is some more time after that, maybe I could ask some more. And if not, then maybe next time. Thank you.
Sure. Sure. Just feel free to raise your hand again if you have some more questions. So Chris is asking, is it true that the universe is ordered in such a way to reward moral conduct? If you think about the natural law of karma, the answer would be yes, right? You're not getting a reward, though. You're just experiencing wholesome karma, that as a collective society, in the way that the natural laws of existence work, that when we practice good, wholesome moral conduct, we experience wholesome results. And it's not just that we experience, things that are happening to us, but also your mind, right? Like when you're lacking wisdom of moral conduct and you're out there doing unwholesome and unwise things, your mind will have discontentedness. You'll be fearful. You'll be stressed. You'll have anxiety. You'll feel guilty and shameful about the things that you're doing in the world. So the karma that you're experiencing is not just that you'll, for example, have more friends, you'll be more successful in your professional career and all these kinds of things, but your mind will also be at ease. This is one of the reasons why an enlightened being can sleep so easily and sleep so well, because they're not worried about the things that they've done during their day, because they know they've only done wise and wholesome things, and they're not going to be waking up to people wanting to fight them and murder them and do all these kinds of things, because they're only doing wholesome and wise things. So there's nothing unwholesome coming back to them. So I don't think of it as a reward, but you can definitely think of it as, these wholesome things are happening. And it's not just external things like better relationships and more success in your professional career, but even within your own mind, you're experiencing improved results there too. Chris is asking, can you share more information about 32-part body meditation? And then he adds, including what is it, how to do the meditation. Okay, so the 32-part body meditation, this is how the Buddha taught to eliminate sexual cravings in the mind, is by developing the unattractiveness of the body. Nowadays, we use imagery because we have photos and things like this, and we can actually look at dissected bodies and we can develop the unattractiveness of the body that way. But during the lifetime of the Buddha, they didn't have that technology. So they would envision in the mind all the different aspects of the body, like the hair, the skin, the sinews, the kidneys, the gallbladder, the bladder. They would go through the body and all the different 32 parts of the body, and they would visualize it in the mind. And this is how they develop the unattractiveness of the body. And from my understanding, this was also done with corpses too, because they didn't have imagery. So oftentimes people would bring a corpse and it would be getting ready to be cremated. And obviously they didn't have refrigeration or embalming during that time necessarily. So there would start to be an odor, there would be maggots and other insects that were, starting to devour the body. And they could sometimes sit there and kind of meditate as the body's being burned, and they would smell this and they would see it, and it would change the mind's perspective from, wow, this is attractive, I want to have sex with it, to, oh, this is not so attractive, and, having this disinterest in having sexual contact. So there's 32-part body meditation that you would need to get all 32 parts. And this is something that I'm going to be teaching in the retreat coming up, that I'm going to be teaching the way that we do it with photographs, but I'm also going to be teaching it with the individual 32 parts of the body. And this is coming up, I think it is on Friday, and it's going to be recorded. So you can see this, where I'm going to be teaching how to move through the body and visualize each one of these body parts. And you can do it this way if you like, or you can do the imagery, or if you happen to be around a corpse, you can do it this way as well. And this helps to develop the unattractiveness of the body so that the mind can eliminate its central desire, if that's what you're interested in accomplishing. And any other details? Okay, so any other details that will help a person to eliminate lust. So when that is coming up, when lust is coming up, when sexual craving is coming up, if you're working to get rid of it, not only would you like to proactively train the mind with either the 32-part body meditation or the way we do it with imagery now, but you would like to cut it off and let it go. And part of that is redirecting it and catching it early, because if you allow the lustful thoughts to come into the mind and start permeating in the mind, it's a lot harder to get rid of them. So if you can catch it early, like as soon as the mind starts looking in that direction, it's a lot easier to redirect the mind or cut it off and let it go. And then another thing you can do is be sure that you're not indulging in looking at things that our arising central desire. Like if you're on Facebook and you're scrolling and you see a picture of a beautiful or a handsome individual, you're not interested in stopping and, wow, look at that. Or if you're watching a YouTube video and is starting to do lustful sexual things, you can change that and get rid of that. Don't sit there and just keep watching that. You would like to redirect the mind. If you're out and about in day-to-day life and you see an individual like, wow, like she's so beautiful or he's so handsome, redirect the mind, like go in the opposite direction. You need to be able to restrain the mind and take it in the opposite direction. Because if you allow the mind to grab on to the features of this images or of this individual and you grasp on it and you allow it to come into the mind and you welcome it into the mind, that's where those central thoughts are arising. So one of the things that the Buddha taught is that if there's anything you're doing that is a rising central desire, you should stop that activity. You shouldn't do that any longer. So like, for example, maybe if somebody gets a massage, even if it's a professional massage, they might notice that central desire is starting to arise. The Buddha teaches to distance yourself from that. So if there's anything that you're currently doing that you notice that when you watch this particular movie or you see this particular thing, that it's a rising central desire in the mind, the Buddha teaches you to go away from that and to stop doing that particular activity. Julie is asking, if someone tries to repeatedly reach out, but you are tired and do not to talk, is it okay to text instead? Yeah, there's no harm in that. And you can even delay your contact with somebody, because oftentimes if someone tries to contact you and you don't reply within a certain period of time, they might start coming at you with their craving and like constantly blowing up your phone with texts or calling you or emailing you. When you see those kinds of things, people are craving and they're having attachment. And the last thing you're interested in doing is feeding that, because they're just going to keep coming at you. They're going to keep pulling at you. So the more somebody pulls at you, the more you would like to create some space. And if that means you don't reply for several hours or even a few days, this is actually really helpful. Someone's mind might perceive this as being rude or impolite, but that's just because of the expectation or the wanting or the craving of having an immediate reply. But you're actually not being disrespectful. You're doing one of the most loving and kind things that you could do, which is provide an environment for this person to let go of their craving and their desire. This is the most loving, kind thing you could do. And it also helps your mind to eliminate any craving and attachment where your mind might think that it's impolite or rude or disrespectful to reply to somebody right away. So if there's like a new student who's learning with me and they start bombarding me with a bunch of messages or even a bunch of questions they're actively interested in learning, I might, kind of like create some more space where it allows them to kind of calm down and calm their mind. Because if they come at me with a bunch of craving where they're constantly wanting to learn the teachings, well, eventually that craving is going to burn out and then they're going to turn away from the teachings anyway. Or they're getting those pleasant feelings when I do reply to them. So then in the situation, say where like I'm traveling to Mexico and maybe I'm on the plane and traveling for 2 or 3 days and now I can't reply to them. And then those 2 or 3 days, they're having all these painful feelings and they're attributing it to me because I didn't reply to their message, when in reality, it's within their own mind. So even if I'm sitting right here, if somebody bombards me with a bunch of phone calls or messages, I choose to not actually answer those. And this is one of the most loving and kind things that you could do. And then I just create more and more space and more distance where it allows their mind to let go. And then they can have a really healthy relationship with their teacher where they're not getting conditioned pleasant feelings when I reply to them, and they're not getting painful feelings when I don't reply to them. Now they can just be in the middle where they appreciate or they have gratitude when I reply to them. But when I don't reply to them, they understand like, okay, he must be doing something else, but he'll get to me when he has time because he's not going to ignore me. He's not going to not answer. He will answer. He just needs some time to be able to do that. And now their mind can be in the middle and we can have a really healthy relationship. Whereas if I feed this craving and just answer it, they're going to get pleasant feelings when I answer them and they're going to get painful ones when I don't. And now their mind isn't going to be able to maintain a long-term, sustainable, healthy relationship, which is what people need in order to get to enlightenment. But it's also what you need in your life to be able to have long-term relationships, because this is going to be much more rewarding and satisfying and fulfilling for you when you're able to maintain harmonious relationships. But if you just feed the craving of the people around you, they're going to get happy when you talk to them, and they're going to get sad and frustrated when you don't. And now they're going to attribute that to you, those painful feelings, and then they're probably going to push you away. They're going to be bitter and harsh and hostile, or they're going to start putting their expectations on you and try to control you and force you to reply to them in a certain time. And you're not interested in feeding into any of that stuff, because that's just going to get in the way of a harmonious relationship. Okay, Julie is asking some more here. Sometimes I feel forced to respond. For example, my sister-in-law wanted to do some religious ritual and called me, and I missed the call and saw the voicemail. I was going to call her back, but then she texted me repeatedly, but also said she sent gifts for the kids and me. While I appreciate the generosity and responded kindly, part of me feel like I'm being forced to interact when I'm quite drained and exhausted. Thank you, Teacher David. Yeah, so what I just shared with you was right along those lines, right? Like if she called you, okay, you didn't answer the phone, and then she starts blowing it up with texts, don't even reply to that. You're not forced to reply. That's your craving, desire, attachment, your own craving, your desire, your wants and expectations, feeling like you're doing something wrong by not replying. So in that situation, it's best for you to not reply. It's going to help your sister get rid of her attachment and her craving. And it's also going to help your mind too, because right now your mind is pulling towards responding. Even though you're quite tired, your mind is feeling like, oh, I got to send this text. And that's going to make you even more exhausted because you're not getting what you truly need, which is the rest. So learn how to put some distance between you and responding to people. And this will be one more attachment that you'll let go of. And you won't experience that exhaustion so much, because the more you're carrying around a cravings, desires, attachments, you're going to feel exhausted. Because in some cases, your mind's going to get what it wants. In other cases, you're not going to get what you want, and you're going to feel exhausted at the end of your day. So if you can get more to the middle, where you're not chasing after cravings and you're not trying to fulfill cravings, then your mind won't experience this exhaustion. Because by the time your mind's fully purified, you won't have that tiredness and exhaustion. But as long as you're fulfilling your cravings and allowing those to stay intact, you're going to keep experiencing this over and over. So this is one of the best things you could do for yourself and for those around you, which is put some distance between your replies. Because if you reply to those text messages, what your sister just learned is, if I call her and she doesn't respond, let me blow up her phone with some text messages and then she will reply. So she's going to keep doing this as long as you keep supporting it. So if they call and you don't answer it, wonderful, don't answer it. You're impermanent, and it's wonderful for the people around you to learn that. Then they start blowing up your text messages, don't answer it. Wait a couple of hours, a couple of days, don't reply. Maybe initially you might wait several hours to do it, and then the next time you wait a couple of days. You just keep making it wider and wider and wider, where their mind has the opportunity to let go. And this will create a much more harmonious relationship for you. Because in that situation where your sister's having those painful feelings because she's chasing after those pleasant feelings, and getting in touch with you is going to give her those pleasant feelings. And she doesn't want those painful ones. So she keeps coming at you, right? So when she feels those painful feelings, if you continue to fulfill her cravings and try to give her those pleasant feelings, when she feels those painful ones, she's going to attribute it to you. And then at some point, she's going to push you away. So you can gradually, incrementally put more and more space between your responses. And this will be wonderful for her mind and your mind too. Chris has some more here. If I study closely as a student of yours for multiple years, follow your guidance, join and complete the teacher training program and you offer, and you confirm that I graduated and I also achieve full enlightenment, would I be capable of teaching the path to enlightenment using references and interpretations of the Bible while clarifying that not everything in the Bible is true? I believe that some of the Bible is not literally true, or at least not true at face value. For added context, the teachings of Jesus Christ have been such a big part of my life, and I credit those teachings for helping me find you as a teacher in the words of the Buddha. I'm interested in interpreting and teaching the sayings of Christ and possibly other religions by sharing in what way they can be true, and suspect I will be capable of being a religious expert if I complete all the milestones I asked about above. Can you also confirm this, what it would be? Okay, let me back up and answer those questions first. Okay, so if somebody gets to enlightenment based on this collection of teachings that I'm sharing, they're going to know without a shadow of a doubt that it's these teachings that lead to enlightenment, and mixing in any other teachings is just going to confuse the matter. And if they're interested in teaching to help other people get to enlightenment, they're not going to modify and change the teachings and doing what you're describing, which is, interpret Jesus Christ teachings in a way that helps people to get to enlightenment. Instead, if you got to enlightenment and realizing how impactful that mental state is and how significant it is for your life, you're going to be interested in people experiencing that exact same mental state, and they would accomplish that through learning these exact same teachings. So by the time somebody gets to enlightenment, they're not going to mix in things from other places. And that doesn't mean that when somebody has a question about Jesus Christ's teachings that you wouldn't be able to answer it, because you surely would. You would be able to answer those questions. You would be able to see exactly what's true and false. You'll actually look at the Bible in a much different way after having gotten to enlightenment or even close to enlightenment. You'll be able to read the Bible and know what would be wise or unwise, because the Bible isn't truly God's word, in my opinion. It's written by other people who studied with Jesus Christ for a year to 3 years, and their mind was polluted and they weren't enlightened and they didn't fully understand what Jesus had to say. So they were writing down what they thought that they had learned, but that's not directly from God himself. If God wanted us to learn specifically what he was interested to teach, he would shake the world and he would drop leaflets from the sky with exactly what he would want us to know. And that's exactly from him. He has the power to do that. He doesn't need to speak through somebody else, but there are human beings who have gotten in touch with God's wisdom and are able to communicate that in a certain way and with clarity and crispness. But there's a lot of false truths and misunderstandings in the Bible that would lead somebody down a road away from enlightenment. So if you learn from a collection of teachings that has produced enlightenment for you, you're going to be interested in keeping it that way, because it's that collection of teachings that led to your enlightenment, and that's what's going to lead to other people's enlightenment too. But if somebody had a question about Jesus Christ teaching, you'd easily be able to see what would be wise or unwise about that, and understand that not everything that's in the Bible is Jesus Christ teaching. Because of impermanence, things have changed, and that's not exactly what Jesus taught during his life. So now Chris is asking more. Can you also confirm this? What would a religious specialist who is enlightened look like? Well, I would suspect that an enlightened being wouldn't consider what they're doing as religion, because in my opinion, religion is rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship. There's typically one person at the top who's disseminating teachings, and they're kind of rules and commandments, and there's all these things that people are kind of conforming to based on this one person at the top who's deciding this is what we should be doing, right? And this is oftentimes what people have done when there's been a teacher like the Buddha or Jesus Christ or Prophet Muhammad. People will collect up the teachings, they'll assign rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship, and now there's one person at the top telling everybody else what they should or shouldn't do. And this is a religion, in my opinion. It's organized practice of faith and belief, where an enlightened being isn't doing that. An enlightened being has learned the wisdom of the path, and they've transformed their mind, they've purified their mind, and they're not talking about they're not dictating a religion to other people. They might, discuss religion about, what's in the world, but they themselves would understand they're not even practicing a religion, because nothing about the path to enlightenment, the true path to enlightenment, is a religion in the way that I understand religion. So in my opinion, you wouldn't consider yourself a religious specialist if you were enlightened. You would just be able to then share the teachings that help people to get to that same mental state that you experience, because part of what you're doing on this journey to enlightenment is you're changing your perspective about how you look at the world and how you interact with the world and how you relate to the world. Where with pollution in the mind is hindered from being able to see the world very clearly and see the natural laws of existence clearly. So by the time you transform your mind, you'll have a renewed perspective on the world and the various things in the world. And then you're offering the ability for others to come to that same understanding. And through the cultivation of that wisdom, that's what's going to transform their mind, through eliminating the pollutions that are in the mind. And then Chris is asking more here, sharing more. I read about the preservation of truth in volume 3 of your book series, and I'm interested in summarizing it. Preservation of truth. Confidence is not enough to truly know something. Approving of something is not enough to truly know something. Receiving an oral tradition is not enough to truly know something. Reaching a reasoned conclusion based on reasoned reflection is not enough to truly know something. Gaining a reflective understanding of a view is not enough to truly know something. Did I word that correctly, or am I mistaken about the word choice and phrasing? Is there anything that could also be added or subtracted in relation to preserving the truth and final knowledge? You know, what you're sharing there is true, Chris, but when you look at the words of the Buddha, it's important to look at his words and glean what he's sharing. And when I get to that point in volume 3, I will share the teachings on that when I get to that in the Pali Canon and English study group, which is right around the corner. We're going to be starting volume 3 coming up this Sunday. So I'll teach it there. And you saw my comments there, my reflections, to be able to help you. And what you're talking about there is headed in the right direction, and what I would consider to be wise to consider in terms of preserving the truth. You're never interested in speaking based on assumptions or speculations, or if you're having those things, you would preface anything you're going to say in that way. You would say, based on my opinion or based on my conclusions, like what I shared with Helena when she asked about psychedelics and an enlightened being. I said, I've never experienced this, but here's my thoughts, or here's my opinion. That's preserving the truth. Whereas if I said, oh, an enlightened being would experience this if they took LSD. Well, I don't have that direct experience, that I haven't taken LSD as an enlightened being to be able to know, or some other psychedelic to know, so I can't speak in absolutes. So preserving the truth is to understand that you don't speak in absolutes, and that you speak in ways that you only speak through your own direct experience. You don't bring in assumptions, you don't cling to perceptions, and you only speak about the things that you know are actually true. And in situations where you don't know, you might just say, in my opinion, or what I would think would occur, or based on my thoughts on this matter, based on what I'm thinking, and those kinds of things. Chris is asking more here, one more. You mentioned that you should remove ourselves from anything that triggers sensual desire. Is the same thing true for things that arise anger, bodily sensations, or conceit? Yes, that would be wise. Like if you're noticing anger arising, like say you're having a conversation with your wife and your anger is arising, it's best to walk away from that. Because if you stay in that conversation, your anger is going to rise, you're going to say something or do something unskillful, and you're going to regret it later. It's going to damage your relationship. It's better to remove yourself from that. But in terms of sensual desire, the Buddha teaches to no longer do those things. So like, say you were doing, like I was mentioning, like a professional massage, and it was a rising sensual desire in your mind. It's wise to just stop doing that entirely so that you can completely eradicate the sensual desire in the mind. Because as long as you continue to indulge in that, it's going to keep arising this sensual desire up in the mind, and you can't eradicate it from the mind. So in this situation, in this example with anger, I wouldn't suggest that you completely go away from your wife and never talk to her again. It's just that when you're noticing anger or frustration arising, that you step away. And now when you step away, you calm your mind, you wait a few hours or a few days, and then you can go back and have a better conversation, and you'll be more skillful in that situation. The bodily sensations are going to occur. As long as you have craving, desire, attachment in your mind, you're going to notice the bodily sensations arising. That's the early warning system that's teaching you how to cut off and let go to eliminate sensual desire. That's the whole reason why those bodily sensations are arising, is because of the sensual desire. So you're going to experience that on your way to enlightenment. And that's just an indication for you to help you get your arms around eliminating your sensual desire by cutting that off and letting it go as a bodily sensation. And yes, if you're noticing that conceit's arising, let's just say you're playing a certain video game and you're noticing that you're getting arrogant and egotistical every time you win. It's wise to go away from that for a period of time and train your mind to let go. But then what you would like to be able to do is actually play that video game some more but now keep your conceit under control, because the problem isn't the video game. The problem is the mental object of conceit, for example. But you need to distance yourself from these objects of, say, like the video games for a period of time in order to get your arms around this conceit and train the mind proactively to eliminate it. But then ultimately, in something like this, like a video game, you're not causing any harm. So you could come back to it and train your mind to learn how to play this video game without conceit. Because if you just push this video game away and you just avoided it, then you never have had the opportunity to cultivate the wisdom of how to play it without conceit. So going away from something entirely that is arising central desire, this is like harmful things and things that are arising the central desire, giving you an opportunity to train your mind to let it go. Let's just say that you're eating chocolate cake and you're noticing central desire arising. The Buddha teaches you to go away from that, right? You would go away from that. But then once your craving, desire, attachment has been fully eliminated, it might take a few months to do that. There's no harm with you eating the chocolate cake again and being able to do that where you can enjoy it and then just move on and you're not getting conditioned pleasant feelings. And that's the same thing with conceit, that you would like to notice in situations where you're getting conceit arising in the mind, step away from that, work on your mind, train your mind to let that go. But then you can get back involved in that particular situation and cultivate the discipline of the mind and the wisdom to be able to now do it without conceit, because just pushing that away isn't going to solve the problem. Okay. Helena, if you have any more questions, you're welcome to ask those, because I don't see any more in any of our other platforms.
Thank you. So, Teacher David, when you said that your grandma she was your mom in another lifetime, how did you recognize this person if she was a different body, different mind?
This is something that if I shared it at this point in time, it would probably create a lot of confusion for people and a lot of challenges for people to deal with by me sharing that. But maybe at a later date, I can share this. But right now, it wouldn't be advantageous or beneficial to share it.
Of course, thank you.
Yeah.
And could you please elaborate on? This is so interesting. The second jhana, when the subconscious mind and the conscious mind are unified, how is it? Because the subconscious mind has such extensive data, right? It's what we keep accumulating during our whole life. And how do you experience suddenly being aware of that?
Yeah, it's not suddenly, it is gradual. But the reason why this is occurring is because of the meditation, of breathing mindfulness meditation, and because of practicing mindfulness in day-to-day life. Your mindfulness becomes so strong and so developed that you now have full awareness of the entire mind, that there's not this kind of subconscious mind, because you've now developed the full awareness through cultivating mindfulness. Because remember, mindfulness in general is awareness of mind. And in the unenlightened state, without wisdom and without training, we will only be aware of our conscious mind. There's kind of a subconscious that the mind isn't aware of. But the more that you cultivate your mindfulness or awareness of mind in meditation and outside of meditation, you become more aware of the entire mind. And now you have full awareness of the entire mind, and there is no subconscious mind.
So the mind still can't imagine this, which probably means that I just have to wait.
Yeah. This is where, like, the Buddha teaches, that there's this, this madness or frustration if you try to perceive what the jhanas were like. It's an inconceivable matter, where just understand that this is what's going to happen. And then as you make your way into the jhanas and you see it and experience it, then you'll understand it. But just know that that is what's going to happen, because that'll be a very good indication for you that you're in the second jhana, because it's very clear that you now have full awareness of the entire mind. Are you aware that that this mind of Helena has a subconscious mind? Like, are you aware of that there's a subconscious mind there?
Yes, very much. And I used to be very interested in that. Hypnosis and magic is also playing with that in a sense. So yes.
Okay. So when you get to the point of unification of the mind or oneness of the mind, you'll be aware of that too then. So that'll be a good indication for you that you've moved into the second jhana.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And then one more question. If enlightened beings are not conditioned by hormones, like, for example, adrenaline, so would an enlightened woman who is young and menstruates, would she still menstruate?
I'm not 100% sure how that works because I don't know any young women that are enlightened and that are age of menstruation. I know that my wife, when she was becoming more and more enlightened, she went through menopause, what I consider to be pretty early. So let's see, she started experiencing menopause, quite early, I would say, in her early to mid 40s. And
very early.
This could be associated with her moving to enlightenment, but I haven't looked at that closely. But I suspected that when I noticed that she was experiencing, going through menopause, that I think that was quite early for an individual. So it would be an interesting thing to see, someone in their 30s that gets to enlightenment. Because remember, by the time you get to enlightenment, you're not having sex any longer. So perhaps the body's like, well, don't need that anymore, so let me get rid of it, and that could be something that occurs. So it would be interesting to see if somebody experiences that and what they experience as they're getting close to enlightenment.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask one more?
You can ask as many as you like.
Thank you. So in the Indian tradition, they talk about samadhi, which is enlightenment, and maha samadhi, which is like great enlightenment, which is the final enlightenment, death. And they say that the final enlightenment is total unification with God. What do you think about it?
Well, the Buddha never taught that anything that he's teaching is unification with God. But in my opinion, anybody who gets to enlightenment, they would understand that this being exists because they can see the complete transformation of their mind. Like my wife, she doesn't have a relationship with God, but she knows God exists. She knows that this is a being in the cycle of rebirth, but just doesn't have a relationship with this being because that's not the way that she was taught. So you can't say that, in my opinion, you can't say that enlightenment is unification with God, because not everyone who gets to enlightenment is going to even have a relationship with that being. So if that was the case, that it was unification with God, then that means everybody would have a relationship with that being. And that would be permanence, which doesn't exist.
And that tradition, Hindu tradition, they also say that the final enlightenment, which is Mahasamadhi, is voluntary. They do it voluntarily. They leave the body because they decide so, according to their tradition. Do you think that is possible?
I don't agree with that, but I've never experienced it for myself because I don't think that you can sit down. I've heard stories of this where people, choose to leave out. I've never seen that occur. Doesn't mean that it can't happen. I've just never experienced it myself, because ultimately what that would be is that would essentially be like committing suicide. Or another way to think about it would be that there's a craving for non-existence. And a being who is enlightened, they wouldn't have a craving for existence, but they wouldn't have craving for non-existence either. So if you're inducing this ability to now escape this existence at will, then one might say that there's a craving for non-existence there, and an enlightened being wouldn't do that.
Okay, makes sense. Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, let me just check Facebook and YouTube one more time to see if we have any questions. Oh, it looks like Yihang has a question. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, Teacher David. I was just wanting to ask if there would be physical interaction or intervene between different realms, especially between the form realms and formless realms. That's because of a story, a quote-unquote paranormal story that I've heard from a woman, a lady. She was telling I think that was probably about 20 years ago. She has sons and a daughter. And there was one day that her daughter, when they were both under age of 10, the daughter, one day she saw her was like talking to a wall while they were living in an apartment of their family in the city. And then the daughter was talking to the wall and asking like, what are you doing there? And then she was feeling a bit scared of that. And then the other day, when something truly happened, is that when she was alone with one of the son, and the refrigerator and the cabinets was suddenly explode, and the drawings from the wall suddenly altogether drops. Like it sounds like a messy disaster for me, and it's very physical, sounds like to me. And I was thinking, would that be related to realms, different realms? Maybe there are different beings interacting, but it sounds like would be a formless being. And I was just surprised, would that be so physical? And I don't feel like this lady would be lying to me.
Yeah, these formless beings are able to do those kinds of things, and we can experience that kind of interaction with them. It's not prevalent in the world, but there are situations where this is occurring, because sometimes these beings don't even realize that they're in the formless realm, like afflicted spirits. They still kind of have the clinging to maybe a human existence, thinking that they're human, and they oftentimes are having craving to be acknowledged in these kinds of things. So yes, this is all possible. And this is where you can see that these beings are all in the same time and space as we are, that they're not in some far distant world somewhere, that we're all within the same time and space. So these are possibilities that occur. And when these things are occurring, if someone has fear, that just feeds those beings. And it's better to not have fear and things like that when these things are occurring.
Okay. Yeah, because I just recalled that this lady also said after a while that they've told maybe before many years there was a painter living there. And then like now when they're telling this story, they will joke about it. Like maybe this painter doesn't like their style of the painting they hand there.
Maybe.
Yeah, but yeah. So if that occur, you will suggest try to eliminate this fear as much as possible. Because once I've heard that, first impression was like, if they are physically able to interact with other realms, I don't know, would that be a danger of us there?
If you're not causing them any harm, then there's no harm that's going to come to you. But if you acknowledge these beings and you, kind of feed into it with fear, then they're going to tend to do those kinds of things more and more. If this thing happened here at my home, which it wouldn't happen because these beings tend to not be around doing mischievous stuff when someone's trained their mind to a certain degree. But if that happened around me, I would just be like, that's interesting. And I would just ignore it. And then, wait several hours and then, clean up the mess if there was a mess to clean up or something like that. Because if you feed into it and you acknowledge it, they're just going to continue to do those kinds of things. You can talk to these beings and you can say, hey, look, this is our house. This is unfortunate that you've done this. It would be best if you kind of moved on. You can communicate with them. But oftentimes doing that can kind of feed it. So that's why each situation's a little bit different. But these things do occur, and it's possible for these things to occur.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Helena is jumping in here, of course, and having some questions about this. Do we know how are formless, non-material beings able to move material objects? I've never seen this occur in a significant nature as Yihang is explaining. I kind of remember some minor things like this occurring around me, but I don't recall it 100%. I've seen afflicted spirits before, but it wasn't direct contact. I was driving down the road. I was in a passenger seat, and I saw this lady wearing this dark dress. It was like a really old, ancient dress from like 200 or 300 years ago. She was holding a piece of luggage, and she was standing on the side of the road, like just out in the middle of nowhere, just standing there. And when we passed by this woman, I kind of looked at her, and then we continued driving. And then I was like, what was that? And I turned around and looked, and she was gone. She wasn't there. So this is like the one visual confirmation I had of an afflicted spirit. And I kind of remember that an afflicted spirit had moved some things one time when I was around, but I don't know how they do it. It's just something that they can do, just like we can move things around. They have the ability to do that as well, even though they don't have physical form. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions anywhere. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just end our class today by thanking all of you guys for joining for meditation, and thank you all for your questions and your interest and dedication in learning and practicing the teachings of the Buddha. If you guys would like to learn more, this Sunday, we're going to be in chapter 19 of this book, which is Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. Chapter 19 is titled The Difficult Human Existence, Sickness, Aging, and Death. This is where we're going to learn about the life story of the Buddha and what motivated him on this journey, and how to deal with situations like sickness, aging, and death, because these tend to be very problematic times in someone's life. They really struggle for their own sickness, aging, and death, but then also the people around them. So I'm going to teach you about this and help you to understand it. And then on Wednesday, of course, we're going to be doing loving kindness meditation and opening up to any and all questions that you guys have. And then Saturdays, we have our Pali Canon and English study group. So you're welcome to join any of these or any of the courses or retreats that I'm teaching and live streaming. You're welcome to attend all of this and get access to all these books at no cost, and the videos and podcasts and personal guidance and all these different things. So thank you all for your interest to learn and grow and develop, becoming a better and better human being on the path to enlightenment. Perhaps we'll see you guys in a future class. Be well and have a lovely rest of your day. Sawadee krap.
Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.